head back to school here in the tri-state. Some people are paying thousands of dollars for their children to attend full-time public kindergarten. Others are not.
And that inequity prompted David Winter to look into why that is and what can be done to even the playing field. And David joins us now live with some answers. David, what'd you find?
Well, Kyle, I found quite a bit. You'd think public school, K through 12, it is free because it's paid for by your taxes, right? Well, not necessarily. Some of you might be surprised to find out, and some of you definitely will not be surprised, that a half day of kindergarten definitely paid for by the state. But for some people, if you want to have your child go to school for a full day of kindergarten, it could cost you thousands of dollars.
I just worked 64 hours last week.
Taja Thompson was surprised. She's a single mom putting 3 children through school in the Princeton School District. She thought she would finally get a break from the cost of childcare until she received a bill for $386 a month. Thousands of dollars so her daughter can go to kindergarten all day instead of just 3 hours in the morning.
I still have to pay school supplies. I still have to pay for her to get lunch. I still have to pay for everything on top of the $386 a month.
And Taja is not alone. Ohio only requires children to attend kindergarten for a half day and requires school districts to offer it free of charge. Many districts offer full day and charge for it, like Forest Hills School District in Anderson Township, $3,090.
This is a charge to the user.
Superintendent Scott Preble says, like football or any other extra activity, full-day kindergarten costs. And because of the state funding model, it would cost Forest Hills about $1 million to provide free full-time kindergarten. They could do it, but he says other programs would suffer.
We're trying to have opportunities for children at all ages, and we have to budget for that, and we have to make decisions based on that.
Having them all day, being able to work with them is critically important.
Boone County Superintendent says while Kentucky now funds for full-time kindergarten, it does not cover his costs, but he figured out how to make it work.
We had to trim in some areas and reallocate in some areas and go without some things that we typically would have done.
17 states require full-time kindergarten. Ohio is not one of them.
If it was a requirement, they'd figure it out also.
Exactly.
If it was a requirement,
require it?
Well, I'd love to put it back on the table.
State Representative Catherine Ingram says if the state were to require full-time kindergarten, districts would find a way to pay for it.
If it were proposed, would you vote for it?
Of course.
So if you would vote for it, if it were proposed, why don't you just propose it?
Well, maybe I will. That makes sense.
It would make sense to Taja Thompson. What doesn't make sense is her working so hard, she barely gets to see her own kids.
It comes down to how much time am I taking away from them because I have to pick up these hours to be able to provide.
School districts that charge parents for the extra half day of kindergarten are required to also provide reduced charges for those in need. But Taja, for instance, still has to end up paying $250 a month for her child to go to kindergarten. Those extra few hours is a lot for her family. And by the way, Cincinnati Public Schools, it is free for everyone for full-day kindergarten. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Local 12's David Winter reporting live tonight. David, thank you. The state of Kentucky only began partially funding full-time kindergarten just this year. If that funding is to continue, though, the legislature will need to make that program permanent coming up in its next session.
Masks are optional for students in the Diocese of Covington. This after a group of parents successfully sued Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear.
A judge put a temporary restraining order in place blocking the governor's statewide mask mandate for schools, 35 of them in the diocese. Local 12's Courtney Wheaton spoke one-on-one with the attorney and St. Joe father who filed this lawsuit.
The attorney said the lawsuit all started out of confusion, parents wanting to know if that mandate affected their Catholic school students. Over the summer, the Diocese of Covington sent parents letters saying masking was optional. But on August 10th, the governor issued an executive order mandating masks in schools statewide. Confusion and concern ensued.
What happened was many people reached out to our priest and the principal and said, you know, can the governor do this to our schools?
A group of more than 20 St. Joe's parents in Cold Spring decided to take legal action to get a direct answer. Attorney and parent Brandon Volker leading the pack.
We purposely did not share it on Facebook, did nothing, because again, it's such a polarizing issue on both sides.
But now it's national news. A federal judge issuing a temporary restraining order and ruling the mandate does not apply to the 35 schools in the diocese.
People ask, do you wish you just hadn't done it or not? And I don't know if half people can give that answer, because it's not. People firmly believe in parental choice, but the viral hatred, and it's on each side.
The next hearing in just 4 days.
I think at that point the governor will present his arguments why he thinks the statute doesn't apply to him, and then the judge will decide whether to issue that preliminary injunction.
So if it came down to it and we found out that masks end up being required, would you let your kids wear a mask?
If the 100 House members and the 38 senators in Kentucky reconvene and decide that under that law that we need to have a mask mandate, I will certainly support that, because that's the rule of law.
And there you have it. And we did receive this statement from the governor's office yesterday. In it, it states the federal court's ruling could place thousands of Kentucky children at risk and undoubtedly expose them to the most dangerous version of COVID-19 we have ever seen. It goes on to say the court ruled without hearing from the governor and with absolutely no consideration of the consequences of the exposure and quarantine that we will see. The office then vowing to pursue every avenue and option to ensure that we can protect Kentucky's children. Now, Volker says both sides agreed to make sure everybody knew that this only affects people in the diocese. In Covington, Courtney Wheaton, Local 12 News.
Courtney, thank you. And as she mentioned, the extent of the governor's power to issue orders related to the pandemic is now before the Kentucky Supreme Court. Right now, there are 2 lawsuits challenging the restrictions and limiting his power.
More than 1,300 volunteers keep the Western and Southern Tennis Tournament up and running each and every year. One group is working behind the scenes, and they have a really big job. They keep the beautiful grounds out there looking picture perfect. Local 12's Tessa DeTiro introduces us now to the Horticulture Committee.
Sunflowers, ferns, greenery galore. The landscaping at the Western and Southern Open is the passion project of 30 volunteers.
But we try to make the flowers pop.
Sue Matheny heads up the team. She's been pruning, mulching, and perfecting the grounds for years.
And a local grower, Diefenbacher Greenhouses, grows all the beautiful flowers that you see. And there's over 5,000 plants that we put in the ground.
Together, the group works through a lot of Mother Nature's challenges.
And sometimes rain causes the plants to deteriorate. So it depends on what kind of rain you have. So it's not necessarily easier for us when it rains.
But when the sun shines, all that hard work is in full bloom.
Because we don't have the funnest job out here. It's a lot of work. I mean, you're lifting 30 to 50 pound plants, and the team that we have works through all kinds of crazy challenges, and nobody whines.
In Mason, Tessa DeTiro, Local 12 News.
And a big thank you to those groundspeople out there, because it does look beautiful. And the tournament donates many of the plants you just saw to Mason High School and its dance team, which then sells them.